The story begins with an idyllic, almost dreamlike portrayal of Millfield, a small town where time seems to move slower, and life unfolds in gentle rhythms. The camera drifts over tree-lined streets, past picket fences, and across a sun-dappled park where children laugh on swings. There's an unmistakable warmth to the scene, a sense of safety, of community. This is the kind of place where everyone knows their neighbors, where doors are left unlocked, and where nothing bad could ever happen. At the heart of this tranquility is Lucy, an 8-year-old girl with bouncing blonde curls and a gap-toothed smile. She's the embodiment of childhood innocence, chasing her scruffy terrier, Max, through the backyard while her mother, Sarah, watches from the kitchen window. The scene is framed like a memory, soft around the edges, golden with late afternoon light. Sarah leans against the counter, sipping tea, her expression a mix of contentment and quiet exhaustion. The radio hums a folk song in the background, blending with Lucy's giggles as she trips over Max and tumbles into the grass, unharmed and still laughing. The details are deliberate. The freshly painted swing set, the pie cooling on the windowsill, the way Lucy's laughter carries like wind chimes. It's all designed to lull the audience into a false sense of security. This is the before, the calm before the storm. The scene lingers just long enough for the viewer to settle in, to feel the comfort of this world, before the undercurrent of unease begins to seep in. Because beneath the postcard-perfect surface, there are hints, tiny fractures in the facade. A shadow passes too quickly across the kitchen window. Max suddenly stops playing and growls at nothing, his ears pricked toward the woods beyond the yard. Lucy pauses, tilting her head as if she's heard something, but then shrugs and goes back to her game. Sarah's smile falters for just a second before she shakes it off. The scene ends with Lucy running inside as dusk settles, the sky turning a bruised purple. The camera holds on the empty backyard for a beat too long, the swing creaking faintly in the wind. The piece feels fragile now, like it could shatter at any moment, and it will. The golden warmth of the afternoon fades into the long shadows of dusk as Lucy skips down the familiar path to Millfield Park, her backpack bouncing with every step. The air is thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and the distant hum of lawnmowers, ordinary sounds of an ordinary day. Sarah watches from the porch, calling out one last reminder to be back before dark. Lucy waves over her shoulder, her voice bright with promise. "I will, Mommy." The park is nearly empty now, the other children already called home for dinner. Lucy doesn't mind. She's content with the company of Max, who trots beside her, sniffing at fallen leaves. She heads straight for the old oak tree at the edge of the playground, its gnarled branches stretching like skeletal fingers against the darkening sky. This is where she always plays pretend, sometimes a pirate, sometimes a queen. But today, something feels different. The air is too still. Even Max tenses, his ears twitching at a sound Lucy can't hear. Then, movement. A woman steps out from behind the tree, her face half hidden by the brim of a sun hat. She's not someone Lucy recognizes, but there's something familiar in her smile. Soft, almost sad. "Hello, Lucy," she says, and her voice is gentle, like a lullaby. Lucy hesitates. Her mother's warnings about strangers flutter at the edge of her mind, but the woman doesn't seem dangerous. She holds out a hand, and in it is a small porcelain doll, one that looks startlingly like Lucy herself. "Your mother asked me to bring you home," the woman murmurs. Max growls, low and wary. Lucy reaches for the doll, curiosity overtaking caution. The woman's fingers brush hers, cold despite the summer heat. And then, a sharp bark. a rustle of leaves. Mrs. Wilkins, the elderly neighbor who lives by the park, squints from her porch. Later, she'll tell the police she saw Lucy talking to someone, but the light was fading, and her eyes aren't what they used to be. By the time she blinks, the girl and the woman are gone. Only Max remains, barking wildly at the empty space beneath the oak. Back at home, Sarah checks the clock, then checks it again. The pie is out of the oven now, the kitchen filled with the scent of cinnamon, but the house feels too quiet. She steps outside, calls Lucy's name. No answer. The streetlights flicker on as she walks faster, then runs, her voice rising in panic. Lucy? Lucy. The park is empty. The swing drifts in the breeze, and nestled in the roots of the oak tree is a single porcelain doll, its painted eyes gleaming in the twilight. The wail of sirens cuts through the night as flashing red and blue lights paint Millfield Park in eerie, disjointed shadows. Sarah stands shivering in her thin cardigan, though the summer air is still warm. Her hands clutch Lucy's backpack like a lifeline, her knuckles white. Around her, neighbors gather in hushed clusters, their whispers weaving a tapestry of speculation and dread. Detective Harris arrives like a storm rolling in, a broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper stubble and eyes that have seen too much. He moves methodically, his voice calm, but edged with urgency as he questions Sarah. Every detail she provides, the doll, the woman in the sun hat, Max's sudden agitation, lands like a stone in still water, sending ripples through the investigation. Flashlights sweep across the playground, their beams catching on the discarded doll at the base of the oak tree. Harris crouches, gloved hands turning it over carefully. The porcelain face gleams under the artificial light, its smile suddenly sinister. Max barks again, straining at his leash toward the tree line where the woods loom dark and dense. A uniformed officer radios in the Amber Alert as others begin a grid search, their voices tight with forced professionalism. The park, once a place of laughter, is now a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoning off the swing set, evidence markers dotting the grass. Harris watches Sarah closely as she recounts the last time she saw Lucy, her voice breaking on the words, "I told her to come home before dark." Then, a discovery, a single footprint in the soft earth near the tree, too large to be Lucy's. Harris motions to a forensic tech who crouches to photograph it. The print is fresh, the edges still crisp. Someone was here. Someone took her. As the search expands, the camera lingers on the oak tree's hollow, a dark gap in the trunk just wide enough for a child to hide in. Harris reaches inside, his expression unreadable, and pulls out a crumpled piece of paper. Unfolding it reveals a child's drawing, a stick figure girl holding hands with a woman, both smiling beneath a scribbled sun. Written in uneven letters at the bottom, "I found my real mommy." Sarah's knees buckle, Harris's jaw tightens, and in the distance, beyond the chaos of radios and shouting, the woods seem to swallow the sound whole. The golden hues of autumn sunlight do nothing to soften the tension that has settled over Millfield like a suffocating fog. 3 days have passed since Lucy vanished, and the idyllic town has fractured into whispers and sideways glances. The park, where she disappeared, now sits behind a perimeter of police tape, its cheerful swing set transformed into a grim monument. Detective Harris pores over the evidence in the cramped police station, the walls papered with maps, timelines, and Lucy's school photo, her gap-toothed smile a haunting contrast to the red missing stamp across the bottom. The porcelain doll sits in an evidence bag, its glassy eyes reflecting the fluorescent lights. The drawing, "I found my real mommy," is pinned beside it, its childish strokes dissected for hidden meaning. The town's collective suspicion lands first on Elias Grayson, a gaunt, silver-haired man who lives alone in a dilapidated house at the edge of the woods. Teenagers whisper about how he watches kids from his porch, though no one can recall him ever speaking to any. When two boys claim they saw him near the park that afternoon, Harris has no choice but to knock on his door. Grayson's home is a shrine to decay, yellowed newspapers stacked to the ceiling, the air thick with the scent of mothballs and loneliness. His hands shake as he insists, "I didn't take her." But then Harris spots it, a photograph on the mantle of a young girl with blonde curls, her face achingly familiar. "Who's this?" Harris asks, pulse quickening. Grayson's voice cracks. "My daughter. She died in a car accident 20 years ago." A sketchpad on the table reveals meticulous drawings of children playing, too meticulous. Yet when forensics sweeps the house, they find nothing. No Lucy. No proof. Sarah collapses onto her sofa, her fingers trembling as she unfolds the note slipped under her door that morning. Letters cut from magazines spell out, "She's safe, for now." Harris examines it under gloves, jaw tight. "Someone wants you scared," he mutters. But who? The press? A prankster? Or the kidnapper themselves? A shout rings out near the old logging trail. A volunteer searcher waves a scrap of pink fabric. "It's from her dress!" But Sarah's face falls when she sees it. Lucy was wearing blue that day. Nearby, Max snarls at a rusted shed, prompting officers to kick down the door. Inside, they find a child's sneaker, not Lucy's, and a pile of candy wrappers. A homeless teen later admits he sleeps there sometimes. Another dead end. Mrs. Wilkins, the elderly woman who first reported seeing Lucy with the stranger, hesitates when Harris re-interviews her. "The sun hat woman. I think she drove a green sedan," she murmurs, "like the one the Miller's nanny used to drive. But the Millers moved away last year, and their nanny Rosa had no reason to take Lucy. Unless..." Harris digs deeper. Rosa had a sister who lost custody of her own daughter, a sister named Clara. The town's handyman, who fixed Lucy's swing set the week before, has a record for petty theft, but no history with kids. A teacher mentions Lucy once drew a new friend with long black hair, but the sketch is gone from her school folder. Max keeps returning to the oak tree, scratching at its roots like something's buried there. By sunset, Grayson is released for lack of evidence. The torn fabric is deemed irrelevant, and Harris stares at the caseboard, exhausted. Every lead branches into darkness. But one thing is clear. Someone in Millfield is lying. The rain comes down in sheets, turning Millfield's streets into glistening black ribbons under the flickering glow of streetlights. Detective Harris sits hunched in the town's dimly lit archives, the musty scent of old paper and dust thick in the air. Piles of yellowed newspapers and decades-old police reports sprawl across the table in front of him, illuminated by the pallid light of a single desk lamp. His fingers trace the edges of a brittle news clipping from 1985, a headline that chills him to the bone. "Local girl, 8, vanishes without a trace." The article is eerily similar to Lucy's case. A blonde child, a park, witnesses who saw her talking to a woman before she disappeared. No body ever found. Harris digs deeper, uncovering another case, 1972. Another girl, same age, same description. The pattern is undeniable, and the dates suggest something even more horrifying. This has happened before, more than once. Across town, Sarah paces her living room, her reflection fractured in rain-streaked windows. The anonymous note, "She's safe, for now," burns in her mind. She hesitates, then pulls a dusty shoebox from the back of her closet. Inside, hidden beneath old photographs, lies a birth certificate. Lucy's. But the name listed under Mother isn't Sarah's. It reads Clara Harlow. Sarah's breath catches. She hasn't spoken that name in years. The memories rush back. Her sister Clara, wild-eyed and desperate, screaming as social workers took her baby away. "You'll never keep her," Clara had hissed at Sarah that day. Then she vanished, just like the others. A knock at the door startles her. It's Agnes, the retired nurse who worked at Millfield General for 40 years. Her hands tremble as she clutches a faded patient file. "I couldn't sleep," Agnes admits. "After the news about Lucy, I remembered something." She opens the file. Inside is a photo of Clara, gaunt and hollow-cheeked, taken the day she was admitted to the hospital after losing custody of her daughter. Lucy. The date on the file matches Lucy's birthday. "She wasn't just unstable," Agnes whispers. "She believed someone was coming for her child, said it had happened to her mother and her grandmother before that." Harris arrives moments later, his coat dripping rainwater onto the floor. He's pieced it together too. The missing girls, the decades between disappearances, the way each was described as happy, golden-haired, last seen near the old oak. "It's not a coincidence," he says grimly. "Someone's been taking these girls for generations, and Clara knew." Sarah's voice is barely audible. Then she didn't run away. She was hiding, and now she's taken Lucy back. Outside, the storm howls. Somewhere in the darkness, an oak tree's branches scrape against a window like skeletal fingers. The storm rages as Detective Harris speeds down the winding back roads of Millfield, his windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the torrential downpour. In the passenger seat, Sarah clutches the birth certificate with Clara's name, her knuckles white. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the skeletal branches of trees that claw at the sky like desperate hands. Harris's radio crackles with static as dispatch relays the last known address for Clara Harlow, an isolated cabin deep in the Black Ridge woods, a place locals whisper about but never visit. The tires skid on mud as they pull up to the property, the cabin barely visible through the sheets of rain. It's a decaying structure, its roof sagging, its windows boarded up except for one, a single lit pane on the second floor, flickering like a dying candle. Sarah doesn't wait. She bolts from the car, screaming Lucy's name into the storm. Harris races after her, his flashlight beam bouncing over overgrown weeds and rusted toys half buried in the earth, ancient rotting remnants of children long gone. Then a sound, a child's laughter. It's coming from inside. Harris draws his weapon as they burst through the front door, the wood splintering under his shoulder. The interior is a nightmare of preserved memory. Walls papered with newspaper clippings of missing girls, their faces circled in red. Dolls line the shelves, each dressed in handmade clothes, each with eerily familiar blonde curls. And in the center of it all, sitting at a small tea table, is Lucy. She's unharmed, clean, dressed in a frilly white dress that Sarah doesn't recognize. Across from her, Clara, older now, her once vibrant eyes clouded with madness, smiles softly as she pours imaginary tea into a tiny cup. "You're late," Clara says, not looking up. She's been waiting for her mother. Sarah sobs, rushing forward, but Lucy doesn't react. She just stares blankly ahead, clutching the porcelain doll from the park. "Lucy!" Sarah cries, grabbing her daughter's shoulders. But Lucy's gaze is distant, her voice a hollow whisper. "She told me the truth," Lucy murmurs. "You're not my real mommy." Harris steps forward, his gun trained on Clara. "Enough. It's over." Clara finally looks up, her face twisting into something between a smile and a snarl. Over, she echoes. It's never over. They've always taken the girls. Every 30 years. Like clockwork. She gestures to the walls, to the clippings. Each girl vanished from the same park, near the same oak tree. But this time, Clara hisses, I took one first. Harris's blood runs cold, because now he sees it. The pattern, the dates, the faces, and the final, horrifying realization. Clara didn't kidnap Lucy. She thinks she saved her. The rain has stopped by dawn, leaving Millfield shrouded in an eerie silver mist. The cabin, now swarmed by police and forensic teams, stands as a grotesque monument to decades of suffering, its secrets laid bare under the cold morning light. Clara is led away in handcuffs, her head held high despite the tears streaming down her face. She doesn't resist, doesn't speak, only turns once to lock eyes with Sarah, her gaze brimming with something between defiance and sorrow. You'll see, she whispers, voice frayed at the edges. They'll come for her again. Lucy sits wrapped in a foil blanket in the back of an ambulance, her small fingers clutching the same porcelain doll. The doctors murmur about shock, about trauma, about dissociation. But Sarah knows it's more than that. When she reaches for her daughter, Lucy flinches, her blue eyes clouded with a recognition that isn't quite hers. She said you lied, Lucy murmurs, her voice too calm, too old for her age. About who I am. Harris watches from a distance, his usual stoicism fractured. The case files spread across his car hood tell a story he still can't fully grasp. Generations of missing girls, all linked to the oak tree, all vanished without explanation. Clara's ramblings about them and 30 years gnaw at him. He flips open the oldest file, dated 1935, and freezes. A photograph falls out, a group of townsfolk in old-fashioned dress, standing solemnly around the oak, scrawled on the back in faded ink, the choosing. At the station, Clara refuses a lawyer. In interrogation, she's eerily lucid, sketching a symbol over and over, a twisted knot of branches. It's the only way to keep them safe, she insists. I broke the cycle. I took her first. When Harris presses her about the other girls, her face crumples. Gone, she whispers, all gone to the roots. Sarah, meanwhile, sits in the hospital waiting room, Lucy's birth certificate crumpled in her hands. Agnes arrives, her face ashen, clutching an old leather-bound book, the town's founding records. I thought you should see this, she says, opening to a marked page. The words, Harvest of Innocence, leap off the parchment, alongside a list of names, every missing girl dating back to 1692. At the bottom, a single line. The tree must feed. A week later, Lucy is released into Sarah's custody, but the child who comes home isn't the same. She stares out windows, whispers to someone only she can see. At night, Sarah catches her standing in the backyard, facing the distant woods, her nightgown damp with dew. Lucy? Sarah calls, her voice breaking. Lucy turns, smiling a smile that isn't hers. They sing to me, she says, from under the roots. Harris, unable to let go, visits the oak at midnight. The ground beneath it is soft, too soft. When he digs, his shovel strikes wood, a small, rotted box. Inside, a collection of tiny bones, a locket, and a curl of blonde hair. He vomits into the dirt. The final shot pulls back, revealing the oak's branches swaying in the wind, though there is no breeze. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.